The graduation after-party was a deafening roar of music and shouting in the club's VIP lounge. I swirled the drink in my hand, my eyes fixed on the person across from me. Serafina Vance. The woman who'd spent 4 years hogging the top of our class rankings, the untouchable ice queen of Northwood University, and my archnemesis, the one I hated down to my bones. Tonight, I was going to humiliate her in front of everyone. I gave my glass of whiskey a little shake. Mixed into the amber liquid was the special ingredient I'd filched from my grandpa's study. A tiny, colorless, odorless packet of powder. Grandpa claimed it could give someone a case of food poisoning so bad they'd wish for death. "Sarah," I said, raising my glass with a fake smile. "One last drink. For old time's sake. We bury the hatchet after this." She lifted her gaze, her cool blue eyes studying me for a few long seconds before she, unbelievably, picked up her glass. "Fine." She downed it in one go. To make it look convincing, I tipped my own head back and took a swig. The fiery liquid burned its way down my throat. I waited, anticipating the moment she'd clutch her stomach and make a mad dash for the bathroom. I waited for her epic social takedown. But she didn't move. The rest of our classmates were getting louder, starting a drunken round of Never Have I Ever. The next second, the heavy door to the lounge clicked shut, locked from inside. Everyone froze. Serafina stood up. Sometime in the last few minutes, her eyes had turned a startling, feverish red. She was staring right at me, and it wasn't the look of someone about to have digestive issues. It was a look I'd never seen on her before, a raw, searing, and utterly insane possessiveness. "Everybody get out." Her voice was a low rasp, laced with a command that tolerated no argument. A couple of the guys started to crack a joke, but the words died in their throats when they saw the chilling, violent energy radiating from her. She took a deliberate step toward a guy standing nearest the door and, without a word, kicked him hard in the shin. He cried out, stumbling back in shock. A dead silence fell over the room. Everyone was stunned by her sudden brutality. She unlocked the door, her glare a silent order for everyone to leave. No one dared to hesitate. They scrambled out of the lounge, tripping over each other in their haste to escape. The door clicked shut again, locking us inside. That's when my own body started to feel wrong. A blistering heat ignited deep in my gut, spreading like wildfire through my limbs. It felt like a million fire ants were crawling under my skin. I remembered the strange, knowing look in my grandpa's eyes when he'd given me the packet. "Kiddo," he'd said, "this is an old family recipe. Don't mess around with it. It could be a real killer." I thought he was just being dramatic. Now, only 3 words echoed in my mind. Concentric curse. It wasn't a laxative. It was some kind of arcane charm, designed to drag a person's deepest, darkest desires to the surface. And if the 2 people under its influence didn't do something about it, the curse would tear them apart from the inside out. I was so screwed. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the plush carpet. The waves of heat were getting stronger, my thoughts blurring at the edges. Serafina walked toward me. The click of her heels on the polished floor was a drumbeat against my heart. She knelt in front of me, every trace of her cool composure stripped away, leaving something raw and terrifying. Her voice was trembling, but laced with a wild madness. "Ethan," she whispered, "you brought this on yourself?" She reached out, her fingertips scorching hot as they traced the line of my jaw. "Tonight, neither of us is going anywhere." Her breath was a hot puff of air against my ear. "I'm burning up," she murmured. "Hurry, cool me down." She grabbed my hand, forcing it against the frantic, pounding heat of her chest. The next morning, I woke up in the impossibly soft bed of a hotel suite. My head was splitting. Fragments of the previous night's madness flooded my brain, making my entire body go rigid. The space next to me was empty, but the sheets were still warm. I shot upright, my eyes scanning the room. Serafina was standing by the window, dressed in a hotel bathrobe, talking on her phone. The morning light outlined her slender silhouette, her cold, keep-your-distance mask firmly back in place. It was as if the feral, demanding woman from last night had been nothing more than a fever dream. She ended her call and turned to look at me. "You're awake." Her voice was flat, betraying no emotion. My throat was sandpaper. What was I supposed to say? Apologize? Yell at her? Pretend nothing happened? She walked over and tossed a sheet of hotel stationery onto the bed in front of me. Read this. The user manual for the concentric curse. Her neat, precise handwriting listed a few simple rules. The hosts must remain within a physical proximity of 30 feet. Exceeding this limit will result in excruciating cardiac pain. The curse's effects must be neutralized daily through intimate physical contact. Failure to do so will cause the curse to lash out. Consequences unknown. Hosts can perceive each other's intense emotional fluctuations and physical pain. I stared at the paper, a sense of the absurd washing over me. Serafina, you've got to be kidding me. I threw back the comforter and started grabbing my clothes. I don't care what this stupid curse is. I'm out of here. She just watched me, silent and still. She didn't try to stop me. I jammed my feet into my shoes and stormed toward the door without a backward glance. The second my hand touched the doorknob, my heart seized. It was a pain beyond description, as if an invisible hand had reached into my chest, clenched my heart into a fist, and twisted. A choked gasp escaped my lips. My vision went black, and I crumpled to my knees. A cold sweat soaked through my shirt in an instant. Gasping for air, I looked up. Across the room, Serafina was clutching her own chest, her face pale as she leaned against the wall for support. Our pain was linked. I scrambled back, crawling until I was within the 30-foot radius. The agonizing pressure in my chest slowly began to recede. Reality had just slapped me across the face. Hard. There was no escape. As her breathing evened out, Serafina spoke, her voice cold. Do you believe me now? I didn't answer, just sat on the floor in defeated silence. We were forced to accept our new, ridiculous reality. We had to live together, at least for now. I took her back to my downtown condo. The Uber ride was a masterclass in awkward silence. The two of us stuck together like unwilling, conjoined twins. I tossed my keys onto the console table by the door. You can take the guest room. She ignored me, walking straight into my master bedroom. She opened my closet and started placing her few belongings inside. I'm sleeping in here. The hell you are? I snapped. She turned, her expression stating the obvious. We have to neutralize the curse every night. Sleeping in separate rooms isn't practical. Her logic was infuriatingly sound. I was speechless. My archnemesis was now my roommate and my bedmate. She was unapologetic. She took over my bathroom, drank from my favorite mug, and even stripped my gray duvet cover, replacing it with a pink floral set she'd brought with her. My personal space, my sanctuary, was being conquered inch by inch. That night, the familiar, agonizing heat returned right on schedule. We stood at opposite ends of the living room in a tense standoff, both too proud to make the first move. The fire inside me grew hotter and hotter. The punishment for my attempted escape earlier seemed to be making it even worse this time. In the end, I was the first to break. Clenching my jaw, I forced myself to walk over to her. She was barely visible in the dark, but I could hear the smirk in her voice, a low chuckle of victory and derision. Looks like you lose again, Ethan. The moment our contact brought relief, the sense of spiritual humiliation peaked. My feelings for this woman had become a toxic, complicated mess. A few days later, the invitation for the graduation gala arrived at the condo. Both of our names were printed side by side in elegant gold script. As the two top graduating students of our year, our attendance was mandatory. I stared at the invitation, a headache already forming. I'm not going. Serafina emerged from the bedroom, already dressed in a stunning, simple white cocktail dress. You have to go. We can't be separated. Then we both don't go, I said stubbornly. She walked over to me and reached up, straightening the collar of my shirt. The cool touch of her fingertips on my skin sent a shiver through me. Ethan, don't be a child, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Tonight, we're a couple. I scoffed, but I was powerless. Under the tyranny of the curse, I put on a suit and let her loop her arm through mine, walking into the glittering hotel ballroom with the enthusiasm of a man heading to the gallows. The moment we entered, we became the center of attention. Whispers erupted from every corner of the room. Am I seeing things? Is that Ethan Cole and Serafina Vance together? Aren't they mortal enemies? They spent 4 years trying to destroy each other, and now they're holding hands. People usually break up after graduation. Did they decide to announce they're together? The gossip made my skin crawl. Serafina, however, was the picture of calm, acting as if we were a real couple, deeply in love. Just then, a man in a perfectly tailored white suit jacket made his way toward us. Preston Hayes, student body president, the golden boy of every girl's dreams, and another one of my longtime rivals. He always wore a mask of sophisticated charm, but I could feel the hostility he directed at me simmering just beneath the surface. So, Ethan, congratulations, he said, his smile as smooth as aged bourbon. I have to say, I never expected to see you two end up together. It's quite a surprise. The implication was clear. Serafina just gave him a slight nod. Thank you, Preston. But he wasn't done. He smoothly positioned himself between us, creating a small but significant gap. Sarah, I heard you landed an offer from that top investment bank on Wall Street. Incredible. I've always been one of your biggest admirers. He launched into a conversation with her, his body inching closer, strategically trying to widen the distance between us. An unfamiliar irritation flared in my chest. At the same time, a dull ache started in my heart. The curse was warning me. We were approaching our limit. I saw Serafina's face pale slightly. She tried to subtly shift closer to me, but Preston blocked her path. A sudden, white-hot anger shot through me. I'd had enough. In one rough movement, I reached past Preston, grabbed Serafina's arm, and yanked her back to my side, wrapping my arm tightly around her waist. It was a crude, possessive gesture. I met Preston's stunned gaze with a challenging smirk. Sorry, man. My girlfriend doesn't like other guys getting too close. The color drained from Preston's face. All around us, the whispers turned into audible gasps. My statement was a public declaration and a direct slap in the face to him. In my arms, Serafina's body was soft and smelled faintly of jasmine. My heart was hammering against my ribs, and the curse, instead of being soothed by our proximity, seemed to react to my sudden spike of jealousy and possessiveness with a jolt of its own. A much stronger wave of heat surged through me. Serafina trembled slightly in my embrace. She could feel my emotions. She tilted her head up to look at me, and in those cool, clear eyes, I saw a flicker of triumph and something deeper, darker. A possessive obsession that mirrored my own. A jolt went through me. It looked like she was enjoying making me jealous. Preston's face was a thundercloud. A golden boy like him had probably never been so publicly humiliated in his life. He quickly composed himself, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. You're still as impulsive as ever, Ethan. I just hope Serafina doesn't suffer for it. He turned and walked toward the stage. As student body president, he was scheduled to give a speech. All eyes turned to him. In our 4 years here, we've witnessed incredible growth and transformation. He began, his voice smooth and charismatic. Then his tone shifted as his eyes found me in the crowd. Some people, thanks to their family name, cruise through life without a single worry for the future. But others, like Serafina Vance, get to the top through sheer hard work and brilliance. He let that hang in the air for a moment. I sincerely hope that the best people find themselves with partners who are their equals and aren't dragged down by someone who is all style and no substance. Every word was a thinly veiled jab, painting me as a spoiled, useless trust fund kid who didn't deserve her. The looks from our classmates turned from curious to speculative. My knuckles turned white around my whiskey glass. A furious inferno was raging in my chest. The intense anger was like throwing gasoline on the curse's fire. Whoosh! The heat inside me exploded, spiraling out of control. I felt strange, glowing red patterns flare into existence under my skin, so bright they were visible through the fabric of my dress shirt. Agony and heat hit me at the same time. My vision tunneled. I could barely stand. Ethan! Serafina grabbed me, her voice tight with alarm. Her eyes widened as she saw the red glow through my shirt. Her expression shifted, becoming wild. Hang on, she hissed in my ear. Don't be scared, Ethan. I've got this. Then, in a move that shocked the entire ballroom, she did something absolutely insane. She cupped my face with her hands, stood on her toes, and crashed her lips against mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was fierce, demanding, and brutally possessive. The entire room went dead silent. Even a band stopped playing. Everyone just stared, their jaws on the floor. A cooling sensation flowed from her mouth to mine, like a wave of relief that instantly doused the raging fire of the curse inside me. The tension in my body finally began to release. When the kiss ended, she stayed close, her arms wrapped around me. Her cheeks were flushed, her breathing ragged, but her eyes were like chips of ice as she scanned the stunned face of Preston on stage, then swept her gaze over our shocked classmates. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the silent hall with perfect clarity. He's mine, a beat, from head to toe, inside and out. He belongs to me. No one else gets to touch him. The possessive, unhinged declaration hit my brain like a bomb. I understood everything in that instant. She wasn't acting. She meant every single word. I could feel the auras of shock, envy, and jealousy from everyone around us, and I could practically see the murderous rage in Preston's eyes. As for me, beyond the overwhelming shock, a strange, thrilling shiver ran through me. This woman, she was completely insane, and I was starting to like it. The gala ended in chaos. I practically had to drag Serafina out of that battlefield of gossip. The second we were back inside the condo, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I pinned her against the wall, my hands on either side of her head. Serafina, what the hell was that? Are you insane? I demanded. Do you have any idea what you said? What you did back there? What happened to your precious Ice Queen reputation? Trapped in my arms, she didn't struggle. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked vulnerable. You don't remember anything, do you? Her voice was thick with unshed tears. I froze. Remember what? She sniffled and began to tell me a story from a past I had completely forgotten. It was back in middle school. We went to different schools then. Her quiet, introverted nature had made her a target for a group of mean girls. They cornered her in an alley on her way home from school, grabbing her backpack, shoving her, calling her a freak. She was small and helpless. All she could do was curl into a ball and cry. Just as she thought they were about to seriously hurt her, a basketball came flying out of nowhere and smacked the lead bully square in the head. A boy in a rival school's uniform appeared, chewing gum, with a cocky swagger in his step. Hey, a bunch of you ganging up on one girl? How pathetic can you get? The boy was silhouetted against the setting sun, a tall, imposing figure. The bully scattered. He picked up his basketball, didn't even give her a second glance, and just whistled as he walked away. I dug through the archives of my memory. Vaguely, I could recall something like that. An insignificant event. I was just cutting through with my friends after a game and couldn't stand the sight of a bunch of bullies. It was a random, trivial act. I'd forgotten about it the second it was over. You forgot, Serafina whispered, her voice trembling. But I've remembered it my entire life. From that day on, you were the only thing in my world. She went to her room and came back with a small, worn box. Inside was a faded, beat-up keychain of a basketball. It was the one that used to hang from my backpack, the one I'd thrown out years ago when it got old. She had found it, and kept it, all these years. I worked my ass off to get into the same high school as you, the same university, just for the chance to see you again, she confessed. I fought to be number one, so you would finally notice me. Competing with you. It was the only way I could get close to you. My mind was reeling. The years of bitter rivalry, the constant competition. It was all a front for a dark, obsessive, one-sided love story. I looked at her tear-streaked face, and, for the first time, I saw this woman as something other than an adversary. She was terrifying, yes, but also a little pitiful. Maybe even a little bit cute. Something in the deepest part of my chest shifted, like it had been gently nudged. The animosity and suspicion I held for her began to dissolve, replaced by guilt and a confusing flicker of affection. The atmosphere in the room changed. I dropped my hand from the wall. I started, but the words wouldn't come. Serafina closed the distance between us, wrapping her arms around my waist and burying her face in my chest. Ethan, she mumbled into my shirt, her voice pleading. Please don't push me away. My body was stiff, but after a moment's hesitation, my own hands came up and rested gently on her back. The confession called a strange truce between us. The open hostility was gone, but it was replaced by a thick, awkward tension. Preston Hayes, however, wasn't finished. A few days later, he called and asked to meet. I was going to refuse, but he convinced me with a single question. Don't you want to know what Serafina is really after? At a quiet coffee shop, Preston slid a folder across the table toward me. See for yourself. I opened it. Inside was a flawlessly forged business proposal. It detailed a plan for a hostile takeover of my family's company, Cole Industries, by Vance Corporation, and the name listed as the project lead was Serafina Vance. Serafina's entire relationship with you has been a setup from the very beginning, Preston said, his face a mask of concern, playing the part of the well-meaning friend. She's the most brilliant finance mind of our generation. Seduce you, use you to influence your father's decisions. The Vance family could swallow Cole Industries whole without a fight. He paused, letting that sink in before delivering the final blow. And that drink at the party. You honestly think you were the one who spiked it? You're so naive, Ethan. Serafina prepared that herself. She knew your personality, knew you'd drink with her to keep up appearances. You were just the fall guy she needed to set her plan in motion. Preston's words were like poison darts, piercing the tentative trust one had just started to build. I didn't want to believe him. But thinking about Serafina's genius-level intellect, her meticulous planning, and her unsettling obsession with me, doubt began to creep in. Her crush on me was real, I knew that. But was it being used as a weapon, a convenient cover for a cold, calculated corporate conspiracy? I didn't know what to think. When I got back to the condo, I found Serafina in the kitchen. She was wearing an apron, concentrating on a recipe on her phone, trying to make my favorite comfort food, braised short ribs. The warm afternoon light bathed her in a soft glow. It was a picture of domestic peace. But now, all I could see was Preston's forged proposal. All I could feel was suspicion. I was quiet during dinner. What's wrong? Is it not good? She asked, her voice small. It's fine, I muttered, pushing the food around my plate before setting my fork down. I'm not hungry. I started putting distance between us, both physically and emotionally. My words became clipped and cold. Serafina was far too perceptive not to notice. I saw the light in her eyes slowly dim, but she didn't ask, just quietly cleared the table. That night, neutralizing the curse was pure torture. We lay on opposite sides of the bed, well within the 30-foot limit, but an emotional world apart, each silently enduring the curse's agonizing heat. The air, once charged with a dangerous chemistry, was now thick with the suffocating weight of my distrust. Through our connection, I could feel the sharp sting of her sorrow and pain. And feeling her pain only made me more angry and confused. I hated that her emotions had this kind of power over me, and I hated myself for feeling a pang of guilt for causing her pain. The conflict was tearing me apart. 7, I had to do something to prove I wasn't completely under her control. The next morning I lied. I have a company emergency. I have to drive to Providence for the day. Serafina was drinking a glass of milk. Her hand paused midair. We can't be that far apart, she reminded me. I know. I'll keep an eye on the distance. I'll be back tonight, I said, my tone final. She studied my face for a long time before finally nodding. Be safe. I got in my car and hit the highway, flooring it toward the state line. I was going to push the curse to its absolute limit. I needed to know if it would actually kill me. And a dark, vengeful part of me wanted to see if my pain would make her suffer, too. It was a self-destructive, desperate test. About 60 miles out of Boston, it started. First, a tightness in my chest, a shortness of breath. Then, the invisible hand clamped down on my heart again, squeezing with brutal force. The pain was blinding. I nearly lost control of the car, swerving onto the shoulder. I sat there, drenched in a cold sweat, gasping for air, but it was useless. The pain just got worse. Through the haze of agony, I could feel what was happening to Serafina. She was in worse shape than I was. Her body was less resilient, and the pain hitting her was magnified. I could almost see her, convulsing in pain before passing out, collapsing onto the cold floor of the condo. What if she dies? The thought struck me like a bolt of lightning, cutting through all my anger and confusion. Panic, a raw, absolute panic I had never felt before washed over me. In that instant, all the suspicions, the corporate plots, the need for revenge, it all evaporated. There was only one thought left in my head. I could not let her die. I cranked the wheel, tires squealing as I made a frantic U-turn across the emergency lane and slammed the accelerator to the floor. My phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Have you come to your senses yet? Ditch the psycho. I know a guy who can help you break the curse. I stared at the message, a bitter, ironic laugh catching in my throat. I typed a single-word reply. Go to hell. In that moment, I finally understood. As much as I feared being used by her, I was terrified of losing her. I burst back into the condo, kicking the door open. Serafina was lying motionless on the living room floor. Her face was ashen, her lips completely drained of color. My own heart stopped. I scrambled to her side, gathering her cold body into my arms. Serafina, wake up. I slapped her cheek lightly, my voice shaking. Her eyelashes fluttered. She slowly opened her eyes. The second I knew she was conscious, I couldn't control it anymore. I crushed her against me, holding her so tightly it felt like I was trying to merge her into my very bones. For the first time, it was me who initiated it. Torn apart by pain and the terrifying fear of almost losing her, I finally surrendered to what my heart had been telling me all along. This woman I'd spent years hating, years fighting, had somehow, without my knowledge, taken root in my soul. I'm sorry. I buried my face in her neck, my voice a raw whisper. I'm so sorry. I never should have doubted you. Holding Serafina, I confessed everything. Preston's manipulations, the fake proposal, the ugly doubts he'd planted in my mind. She listened quietly, nestled against my chest. She didn't cry or try to defend herself. She just held me, and, when I had finished, gently shook her head. Once my breathing had returned to normal, she finally spoke, her voice still weak. I know, she whispered. Tonight, let's go somewhere fun. That evening, she took me to a lavish corporate gala hosted by the Hayes family. I was confused, but she just gave me a mysterious smile. Inside, Preston was in his element, the perfect heir apparent, schmoozing with his father and the city's elite. Serafina ignored everyone, walking directly to the small stage at the center of the ballroom. She picked up the microphone, immediately drawing the attention of every guest. Good evening, everyone, she said, her voice clear and steady. Sorry to interrupt. I just have a few interesting things I'd like to share with you all. She pulled a flash drive from her clutch and plugged it into the laptop connected to the projector. A second later, the internal financial statements of Hayes Corporation filled the massive screen behind her. The numbers were horrifying. Massive deficits, fraudulent accounting, illegal transactions. A company on the verge of total collapse. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Preston's face went white as a sheet. Serafina, what do you think you're doing? He roared, his composure finally cracking. She paid him no mind, continuing her calm, methodical explanation. Hayes Corporation is functionally bankrupt. To cover a multi-billion-dollar hole, Mr. Hayes here devised a kill two birds with one stone plan. The image on the screen changed. It was now a series of screenshots, a chat log between Preston and a distant cousin of the Vance family. In the messages, Preston offered the cousin a substantial sum of money to steal the concentric curse charm from my family and orchestrate the whole graduation party setup. His goal was to turn me and Serafina against each other, tarnishing the reputations of both our families in the process. Then, he would swoop in as the savior, attempting to secure a marriage alliance to control the Vance fortune while simultaneously shorting and acquiring my family's company during the chaos. It was a vicious, brilliant plan. It turned out my grandfather had suspected Preston was up to something all along. He had simply played into the scheme, giving me the real concentric curse to see what we would do. The truth was out. Preston's father, seeing his empire and his son's future crumble before his eyes, clutched his chest and collapsed. The gala descended into pandemonium. Preston stood frozen, his face ashen. Years of jealousy and meticulous, evil scheming, all exposed and turned into a public joke. Serafina switched off the projector and fixed him with an icy glare. Her voice was low, but every word was a dagger. You should never, ever have touched what's mine. She stepped off the stage and walked back to my side. Watching her dismantle my enemies, a queen calmly surveying the battlefield she had just conquered, I was filled with a wave of pride and a love so fierce it almost knocked me off my feet. She wasn't a fragile flower who needed my protection. She was a warrior queen who could fight by my side, or even in front of me. I took her hand and laced my fingers through hers. "Let's go home, Your Majesty." With Preston Hayes out of the picture, the last barrier between us was gone. But the concentric curse still hung over our heads like a time bomb. "We should go see my grandpa," I suggested. "He has to know how to break it." Serafina nodded. We drove out to his house in the suburbs and found him peacefully fishing on the dock behind his house. I recounted the entire chaotic story, expecting him to be shocked or at least a little guilty. Instead, when I finished, he started stroking his beard, a huge grin spreading across his face before he burst out laughing. "Ha! Excellent. Just excellent," he roared, slapping his thigh. "I knew that girl had it bad for you. And I knew you were just a stubborn fool with too much pride. If I didn't give you two a little push, you'd still be dancing around each other until you were old and gray." Serafina and I just stared at each other. "Grandpa, this isn't funny," I pleaded. "Just tell us how to get rid of this curse. Are we really going to explode, or something?" He stifled his laughter, putting on a serious, mysterious expression. "A cure. Well, it's not that there isn't one." "What is it?" we asked in unison. He set down his fishing rod and spoke slowly. "Oh, the exploding from the inside out thing? I made that up. Had to scare you into not misusing a family heirloom. You reckless kid." I was dumbstruck. You made it up. "Then what does this thing actually do?" Serafina pressed. "The concentric curse isn't a curse at all," my grandpa said with a proud puff of his chest. "It's the Cole family's soulmate charm." He looked positively delighted with himself. "Its only purpose is to take two people who are clearly meant for each other but are too stubborn to admit it, and force them to feel each other's presence, to rely on each other, until they can't imagine being apart." He paused for dramatic effect. "And as for the only cure," he drawled, looking between the two of us, "it's to fall truly in love, grow old together, and never, ever be apart for the rest of your lives." He picked his fishing rod back up and started whistling, the very picture of a mission accomplished. Serafina and I stood there, completely frozen. All this time we've been played by a meddling old man. The life-or-death drama, the forced bonding, it was all an elaborate matchmaking scheme. After the wave of absurdity washed over me, all I could do was laugh. I turned to look at Serafina. She was already looking at me. In her beautiful eyes, the obsessive madness was gone, as was the cold distance. All that was left was a watery softness and a shy blush she couldn't hide. I thought, this isn't so bad. I turned back to my grandpa, pretending to be angry. "You can't just force people together like this. What if we really weren't right for each other?" Without even turning around, he waved a dismissive hand. "Not right? Then why'd you break every speed limit to get back to her? And why'd she kiss you in front of hundreds of people? Stop lying to yourself, kid. You had me there." I had no comeback. Just then, a soft hand slid into mine. It was Serafina. She was looking at the ground, but her voice was quiet and incredibly firm. "We're a perfect match." 10 with the threat of imminent death gone, my entire perspective shifted. I thought back on the last few weeks of being utterly dominated by Serafina and decided it was time for a little revenge. If this was a soulmate charm, it would be a waste not to explore all its features. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Serafina was in her home office, focused on a legal brief, looking every bit the high-powered lawyer she was becoming. I was sprawled on the couch nearby, pretending to scroll through my phone. I closed my eyes and concentrated, replaying the memory of our first, desperate neutralization of the curse. I focused on every single heart-pounding detail. Clatter. Serafina's pen dropped on her desk. I cracked one eye open to peek. A deep crimson blush was spreading across her cheeks, reaching all the way to the tips of her ears. She shot me a death glare that clearly said, "You are so going to pay for this." I beamed, putting on my most innocent face. "Everything okay over there, counselor?" Hit a snag in the case. She bit her lip and refused to answer, snatching up her pen to get back to work, but I could tell her focus was completely shot. I decided to press my advantage. At dinner, I accidentally brushed my knee against hers under the table. Then I focused my mind, sending a wave of intense, possessive love directly to her. Ahem, cough, cough. She choked on her soup, sputtering and coughing until her face was red and tears welled in her eyes. I immediately handed her a napkin, my face a mask of concern. "Whoa, slow down. No one's going to steal it from you." She snatched the napkin, dabbing at her mouth, her watery eyes filled with a beautiful, impotent rage. Later that night, I cornered her against the wall. I mimicked the way she had dominated me, leaning in close and whispering in her ear, "Serafina, your heart is beating so fast." I could feel her emotions perfectly: nervousness, embarrassment, and a thrilling undercurrent of anticipation. She tried to push me away, but I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her tighter against me. "Ethan, you're an asshole," she gasped, squirming in my arms with all the force of kitten. I lowered my head and captured her protesting lips with mine. This kiss wasn't driven by the curse's frantic heat or a sense of humiliated defeat. It was slow, tender, and deep. After a long moment, I pulled back, resting my forehead against hers. "Serafina," I said softly, looking into her dazed eyes. "I think I'm under a curse, too. It's called the can't live without you curse." All the fight went out of her. Her arms snaked around my neck, and she pulled me back down, returning my kiss with an urgency that was all her own. Years of rivalry, finally melting into the sweetest surrender. The tables had turned. In the end, I was the one who won. 11. The downfall of the Hayes family was swift and brutal. Tax evasion, market manipulation, the list went on. The company declared bankruptcy, and Preston Hayes went from golden boy to social pariah overnight. I thought our lives would finally settle down. But at a major university alumni gala, the madman made one last appearance. It was a black-tie event celebrating the university's centennial, attended by a who's who of politics and business. As two of the year's most successful alumni, Serafina and I were invited guests of honor. Halfway through the event, Serafina excused herself to go to the powder room. After 10 minutes passed, and she hadn't returned, a powerful sense of dread, transmitted through our bond, seized my heart. I could feel her emotions. Fear. But underneath the fear was a layer of stone-cold calm. I immediately got up and headed toward the restrooms. Near a secluded utility closet, I heard Preston's voice, raw and unhinged. "Call your father, Serafina. Tell Ethan to call off the dogs right now." My blood ran cold. I was about to kick the door in when a clear thought, not my own, entered my mind. "Don't come in. He has a knife. Stall him. I've already called the police." Pretend to agree with him. Keep him calm. It was the curse, creating a telepathic link. I instantly calmed myself. Instead of breaking down the door, I sent my own thoughts back to her. "Got it. I'm clearing the area and getting security. Get yourself near the door when you can." I could feel her receive the message. I heard her voice from inside the closet, steady and calm, de-escalating the situation. "Okay, Preston. Okay. Don't do anything crazy. I'll help you. Just put the knife down so we can talk." I quickly walked back to the main hall, found the head of security, and murmured a few urgent words. His eyes widened, and he immediately began coordinating his team over his radio. I then moved through the crowd, calmly telling guests there was a small technical issue and directing them toward a safer area of the ballroom. Within minutes, the utility closet was silently surrounded by security. We were just waiting for the signal. Inside, I heard Serafina pretend to stumble. Preston, my leg. I think I'm going to fall." She collapsed, conveniently, toward the door, creating the perfect opportunity. Now, I launched myself at the door, kicking it open with all my strength. The scene that greeted me was not what I expected. Serafina was not a helpless victim on the floor. As I burst in, she lashed out with a lightning-fast kick, striking Preston's wrist with perfect precision. The knife clattered to the floor. Before Preston could even react, police and security swarmed in, tackling him and pinning him to the ground. I rushed to Serafina's side and helped her up. "Are you okay?" She shook her head, a small, triumphant smile on her face. We looked at each other, and no more words were needed. We weren't just lovers. We were partners. The most in-sync, formidable team in the world. With the last loose end tied up, Serafina and I finally began the life we both wanted. Her possessive streak never went away. It just transformed from a dangerous, terrifying trait into a private, thrilling game between the two of us. I was no longer the perpetual runner-up, the immature rival who wanted to see her fail. I was, willingly and enthusiastically, the one person she was allowed to possess. One sunny afternoon, we were watching a movie on the couch. I took a call from a new female colleague to discuss a work project. We ended up chatting for a few minutes longer than necessary. When I hung up, I turned to find a pair of intense blue eyes staring at me. Serafina was hugging a throw pillow, her expression completely blank. It was the same look she'd had the night of the graduation party, a look of appraisal with a delicious hint of danger. I had to hide my smile. She crawled across the couch, straddled my lap, and calmly took my phone from my hand. Without breaking eye contact, she found my colleague's contact, blocked the number, and deleted it. The whole sequence was smooth, silent, and decisive. When she was done, she leaned down, her nose brushing against mine. "You know," she purred, her voice a low, dangerous caress. "I don't think we've neutralized the curse yet today." I laughed, wrapping my arms around her waist and flipping her onto her back, pinning her beneath me. I leaned down and whispered in her ear, my voice for her alone. "Yes, my queen." I had discovered that I was hopelessly addicted to her brand of fierce, all-consuming possessiveness. It made me feel like I was the center of her entire universe. She leaned up and bit my neck, not hard enough to break the skin, but just enough to leave a clear, red mark. She pulled back, a satisfied look on her face. "There," she announced. "Now you're branded. You belong to me." I captured her mouth with mine, kissing her with a depth and passion that left no room for doubt. The sun streamed through the window. Our story had started with a curse, but it would be defined by a love that was just as binding and infinitely more powerful. I hadn't just beaten my rival. I had won her for life.